got to be my favourite time of the week when we go behind blue eyes for the New South Wales Rugby League with Stephen Roach. How are you, Stephen?
Timmy, I've always said you're so easy to please, mate.
Okay, well, you would have been. Well, my wife doesn't say that, but you would have been happy. You would have been happy with Luke Brooks. It's been such a topsy-turvy time in the top grade after so many people said this guy's going to be the next star when he was playing for Holy Cross Ride. He's been halfback of the year, this, that, and the other. Not quite lived up to expectations, but that field goal, that match-winning field goal, must help confidence.
I think that's all a learning curve, isn't it, Timmy? You know, just you go along in your career and all of a sudden you pick different things up. If you could mull them all together and then play, your best every week, week in and week out with all the skills that you've picked up along the way, you'd be a superstar. So just another thing, I like this calmness, the field goal. I like players who can get the footy when the game's on the line. And we saw Luke Brooks do it last week, and it wasn't the greatest game of all time, but the Tigers got home and they needed to.
Look, the Roosters have got a few players back block, but they still are far from at their best. If they're ever going to get them, the Tigers, it's going to be this week, and they need to, don't they, to get a run on.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Timmy. I don't know whether you've looked at the Tigers' run coming home. I don't think I'd be looking at it.
It looks tough, goodness gracious.
I mean, it's everyone but in the top four, so it's going to be tough for them. But mate, while you got a little air left in your lungs, mate, you're certainly a big chance anyway. So, mate, the Roosters aren't at their best. I noted last week, the coaches all talking about the injuries and all that. Well, welcome to the real world, because that happens to every club. So, we'll see the test of depth now. I don't know whether they're going to put Sonny Bill in the Roosters straight away. I reckon they might let him wait another 3 weeks. He looked like he had a knee bandage on the other day too, so they don't want to throw him in raw. He'll need time to get himself in good nick. But, they'll get all their players back. The big thing for the Roosters is to be in and around that top four at the end of the season. So they've got to win these games and must win games too. They look at the Tigers game and think, we should win this.
Look, a decision will be made soon about the future of Harry Grant. He's missing your boy, Harry Grant, of course. He's been great for the Tigers when he's played this season. But it's an uncertain future, isn't it, with Cameron Smith yet to make a decision about his future, and Brandon Smith also playing well for the Storm. For those that don't know it, basically, Harry Grant's there on a loan deal from Melbourne to the Tigers.
Yeah. Mate, he's been out and out. Well, was leading the Daily M's before he got injured, so that's how good he was going. The Tigers love him there, Harry Grant, and they want to keep him there. Brendan Smith down there in Melbourne. I just wonder if Cameron Smith plays on and they take Harry Grant back. This is only hypothetical. Would Brendan Smith then become on the market? Because I know that if Cameron Smith signs again, Harry Grant becomes a free agent. Now, that's not necessarily certain that he'd stay at the Tigers. I reckon there'd be a lot of clubs lining up for his signature. So it'd be a big job for the management. But the Melbourne Storm are saying now that if Cameron Smith doesn't sign with the Melbourne Storm, Harry Grant, and they've got room for Harry Grant and Brendan Smith. I think Brendan Smith can play at lock off the bench. And Harry Grant certainly would be their starter in Melbourne if Cameron Smith doesn't play. But I'm not so sure Cameron won't. I think Cameron will go on.
He's old school, Brendan Smith. I love him. I love this the way he rolls and rocks. It's a bit 80s about him, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, mate. He's a robust little bugger. If you look at him and you think, up against all these blokes, the prototype of 6'4" and can run like the wind, he's a little wombat, isn't he? But he gets in front of him, gets under him. Mate, he bashes everyone. I think he'd have a go at the ball boys if he could.
He's certainly stepped up at Craig Bellamy. Like, the guy's just got the touch. He's just got the Midas touch as a club coach. Extraordinary. Now, look, just looking at the Tigers in that position, it does leave it a bit thin, doesn't it, if Harry goes? I know that Jacob Little made a return, but they could do with a Tom Starling or someone like that, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could, mate. They need someone there. Jacob Little, I think, look, explosive speed out of dummy half. I think the Tigers, because they had to, I think they put him in a little bit early, just coming back from injury now. Another good off-season, you don't know, mate. Look, I think he's a good player. I don't know whether he's robust to play in the middle for 26 weeks. That's what you got to find. Some bloke who can, give you a heap of games. So maybe another off-season. I think he's got talent, Jacob Little. I think he's a good player, but I think he needs a little bit more bulk on him.
It's quite ironic that you mentioned someone that will give it to you for 26 rounds. Cameron McInnes has got to be the prototype for that, doesn't he? He's an extraordinary talent and has been since he was quite young. And would you have him in an extended squad for the Blues?
Yeah, depending on how many people you're gonna pick. If say for the 3 games they pick a squad of 25, the good thing about McInnes is he can play in multiple positions. You could throw that bloke in anywhere. Tough. I love the way that he plays. You know what I love even more, Timmy? When he gets interviewed after the game and he doesn't put his teeth in. I love that. Mate, he's whistling through his teeth all the time. But I love that about him. He's an old school type of player. Roll the sleeves up and away he goes. But what I love about him is exactly what I was saying about what Jacob Little needs, a time on the field and being able to give your team that sort of thrust that they need week in and week out. So, mate, yeah, to answer your question, if they had a squad of 25, that bloke could play anywhere. I'd probably have him in there, considering the seasons he's had. But the big thing Freddie's got to do now is, and you've got to look at, rest. If the St George Illawarra side don't make the 8 and they don't look like they're going to, the amount of time that players will have off, are you going to pick teams or players that have played in the semi-finals for the 3-game State of Origin?
And he doesn't look to be intimidated by whoever he comes across either, does he?
Yeah, could not give a rat's. That's what I like about him. Tough as he'll get in front of anyone. So, he's a tough competitor. He's the sort of player, if you're going to build a team, he's the sort of player that you go after. If you're going to build a team around, not that he'd leave St George Illawarra, but he is a tough competitor.
All right, Block, let's move on to another subject, and it's a big one. It is around the Roosters woes, if I can get the word out. Kyle Flanagan, he's got dropped. Is that going to help him? How's he going to go with this?
Well, we talk about that all the time when players get dropped out of teams, what the message is. Now, from my understanding, it was based around his defence. He needed had to fix his defence up. So, Robinson's pretty smart bloke. He would have sent him away with some goals and some some stuff that he had to achieve before he'd be brought back into the footy side. So, but injury to Lamb, the other bloke there, young Walker. Geez, I've heard some reports about him. They reckon he's a superstar. But whether they put him in at 18 years old is another thing. But in saying that, it takes pretty gutsy coach to drop a bloke when he's leading the point scoring in the whole of the NRL. And obviously, you need to work on his defence. That's what I think anyway. I don't know that for 100%, but I would imagine that's why he was dropped. And he would have gone away and worked on it. I think it'll help him. Everyone in their career at some sort of stage gets a tap on the shoulder and gets put in reserve grade, whether they're coming back from injury or their form isn't warranted. So, I think Kyle Flanagan's a pretty good player. I'm looking forward to him coming back.
Who do you think will lead for them for the rest of the year? Because, look, the one coach that didn't want to make excuses was Trent Robinson. He just said, look, we were just outplayed. So, but he needs leaders. Jared Waerea-Hargreaves comes back. He is one that does the stats stack up for him, don't they? They win a lot.
To tell you the honest truth, Timmy, I reckon he's in the top 10 front rowers of all time. If you have a look at his record and what he does, and he intimidates oppositions. The other bloke too, they missed as their captain coordinator. Geez, they're playing it safe. It must be the head knocks and that for Boyd. He must be a lot worse than what we would imagine, because I know him pretty well, as you do. He's the type of bloke that wants to play every week. He wants to be a competitor. He wants to go out there and play and lead that Roosters side, as he has done in those last couple of comps that they've won. But he must be a lot. They must be protecting himself from him, because I know the style of player that he is. I know that he goes out. There's no self-preservation. He just goes out and plays hard every week. So they're probably looking at that too, and giving him a good rest. And hopefully, as I said a little bit earlier, if they're in and around that 4, they'll be able to challenge if they win these sort of games that are expected to win.
Parramatta still haven't done what you completely want, Block. They haven't iced games consistently enough with the players, at that point to convince us all that they're going to win the comp. What do you make of them at the minute? They're there. They're giving their Parramattitude fans a reason to dream, but they need to convince it a bit more, don't they, Stephen?
I still think they've got to get down in the gutter and get dirty. Now, if I'm watching a game of footy and Parramatta, this is the way I look at them. If Parramatta are ahead by 20, I think they've got the players in their side to win by 30 or 40. But if it's 8-6 with 10 to go, that's what we're all looking for, And there's no doubt that they've got players in their side that can ice it. But I worry when, Saints had it all to play for last week, and they would have known that. They would have looked at the team sheet and they would have known that, that McGregor's not going to be on the staff or coaching anymore after this game. So sometimes, Timmy, you've got to get yourself up, mate. It's a bit like I think I talked about it on the weekend. It's a bit like, Newcastle Knights winning 44-4 against the Tigers. Next week they play Manly. And sometimes you go into that mode of, we won 44-4 last week. Manly's had a few changes. We don't really, it's a bit of a letdown. Now, that's up to the coach to get blokes up for those sort of games, and up to yourself. That's my only worry for the Parramatta side at the moment, is the games that they're expected to win. They probably don't perform as we would expect.
A lot of people will take them very seriously if they can beat Melbourne. They've got an absolutely atrocious record against the Melbourne Storm. Interesting matchups, Gutho versus Pappenhausen.
Oh, mate, wonderful speed from both of those guys. Both super fit. Pappenhausen never ceased to amaze me for such a little bloke, how he doesn't mind running through the meat of rucks. And, Gutherson's exactly the same. There's matchups all over the park in this one. I don't know whether they're scarred last year when they went down after they thrashed the Brisbane Broncos in the semi-final and were flying Parramatta and went down to Melbourne. And Melbourne have just got that knack of getting down in the gutter with you. And I don't know whether Parramatta were real comfortable with that. And I reckon they would have had a big week this week, reminding them of all that sort of stuff that they need to. They need to compete for the full 80 minutes, but they need to get down in the gutter with the Melbourne Storm if they're going to beat them, because they drag you down there. So this is the biggest game so far this season for Parramatta, to beat the demons of the Melbourne Storm. That'd be in their heads at the moment.
Yeah, well, they're like a bit like the Roosters. They're going to get them at a good time, aren't they? In the sense of no Cameron Smith, no Munster, no Bromwich. Yeah,
but we saw how they competed last week when they didn't have all those guys, and all of a sudden they come out in the Sydney Cricket Ground against the Roosters and just, the game was all over by half time, just blew them away. So Bellamy, just a genius to getting his team up and getting them ready and making them competitors.
Are the Tigers done, do you think, Block, with that run home if they can't manage to beat the Roosters?
Yeah, I'm worried about it, Timmy. The poor coach is trying to beat that cycle of finishing ninth, and they've done it the last couple of years. Mate, I would, if I sit back and I look at the draw, I would doubt whether they'll finish ninth this year. I think they might finish a little bit lower. It hurts me to say it, but I just don't see them, beating those big sides, mate, and that's the problem.
Souths and Manly, look, neither have been completely convincing. There are some excuses, particularly for Manly with injury. They're desperate for a win, which could mean finals contention. What do you make of this game?
Yeah, Marty DePauw's back, which will be a big help for them too. I thought they were a little bit thin through the middle. They tried hard last week against the Newcastle Knights. Jakey was moved to the front row, and mate, you talk about blokes who just put their body on the line every week for the Manly side. Thompson bit half his tongue off. Did you see that?
Yeah, wow, I saw that. Ooh,
you imagine imagine how swollen his tongue would have been the next day, and not being able to eat or drink anything. And they were talking about
I tried not to imagine.
They tried to stitch him up when he got home. So he travelled 2 hours or 2.5 hours on the bus with every beat of his heartbeat. The blood had spurted out of his tongue. So
tough game.
Oh dear! Can you imagine?
Have you ever thought of going to Hollywood to write some of these dark thrillers that the kids love, Stephen? The way that you just described that. Anyway, we do digress. Look, Cameron Murray and Jake Trbojevic, no doubt, if they're fit, they'll be in that Blues team at the end of the season. They come up against each other here.
Yeah, they do. Marty back. He'll move back to lock. Jake. To me, Jake looks a bit tired, mate. He looks a bit rattled at the moment. Although, as I said, he rolls his sleeves up and plays hard every week in and week out. I think Manly's got to find a way, if they can, I don't know how they're going to do it, to give him a week off and refresh him a little bit. He's just carrying the world on his shoulders at the moment, trying to do everything. But Murray's a class act, mate. I get even more impressed now every time I see him play. I saw him what he did in the Origin last year. Just a little thing, Timmy, to be able to push himself through that sort of, in the Origin. They say that they ran out to him with about 10 minutes to go, and he was absolutely gone, but found a way to push himself through. So Souths, mate, they're just chilling there at about, what are they, about 6th or 7th place at the moment?
They're in 8th spot block. They're on 16 points, and Manly are on 12. So that just gives the context of how important a game it is. Because if Souths win, you'd almost think that 8 is sewn up, bar a massive run or someone falling down the ladder. But what is it about Souths that's not convincing us at the moment? Because they're just wobbling their form, aren't they?
Yeah, I think playing for the full 80 minutes, Timmy, I see patches of brilliance. So, like, I'll give you an example. Last week, the halfback with no fullback at home, up in the line, chips over the top, Reynolds, and scores. And just stuff like that. But it's patchy, and we already mentioned it like 100 times this season. They lost Sutton and Burgess and those sort of guys last year. It's hard to replace those guys. You probably don't realise until they're gone. What sort of impact they have over a full season. I'm talking now. You need your best players on the field, but you need your toughest guys too to be playing week in and week out. And I think South are just sort of in that sort of rebuilding stage at the moment. They've got some good young players, but they're not Sam Burgess or the likes of that. Yeah,
well, Knights Cowboys. We'll finish here because David Clemmer. He's really started to work on some other parts of his game, particularly the offloads, and look, he's right up there. He's topping the NRL stats now for offloads. It wasn't the strongest part of his artillery, was it, there for a while?
No, it's good to see him developing his game, Timmy. When you have a look at it, like he was leading the hit-ups in that last year and probably right up there again this year. But to me, if he's got the ability to offload the football and they're good offloads, you start to think of him as twice as better player if he's got a couple of strings to his bow. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, he's been always a great man, meters after contact and the amount of work that he does and how many hit-ups. But with this offloading now, I think it makes you twice the player than, what you were when you were just a hit-up merchant. So, mate, I'm liking what he's doing. I'm also liking what Saifudi's doing. Both Saifudis. Mate, they're tearaways, those two.
Yeah, and you gave Mitch Barnett an enormous rap last week as well. You love the way that he plays with the aggression, and it was a great battle with Jake Trbojevic last week. But I'll just finish with Pearce versus Morgan.
I think he's an Origin player too, mate, in the making.
Barnett,
And I was saying, a little bit earlier, if they pick a squad of 25 and Newcastle, go on a little bit of run, mate, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they pick Mitch Barnett in the New South Wales squad. I don't know whether he'd make the team, but with these games going back to back to back, you're going to need some tough guys in there. And Mitch Barnett tries to put his stamp on the game every week. I like him. I really like the way he plays.
And there's going to be an attrition rate, as we've mentioned before, because it is at the back end of the season. So there will be, as much as we don't like to see players go down injured, there almost certainly will be one or two that are going to be under clouds. Let's finish with Mitchell Pearce and Michael Morgan, because look, the Cowboys are such a different team with him in it. You would expect him to be there for Queensland. And what have you made of Mitchell this year and heading towards Origin at the end of the year with Mitchell Pearce in mind?
Oh, he's always been consistent, Mitch, isn't he? Always, he's the incumbent at the moment. I would say if you man them up and look at both of their seasons this year, Cleary might be a tad ahead, but Mitch is one of those sort of guys that takes on challenges. So I think he's been great. I think Blake Green coming to the club last week when they thrashed the Tigers was good for Mitch, because Mitch can just go out and play and be Mitch, just control things that he wants to control. I think he was worried about being the captain and, controlling everything for the Newcastle Knights. Now Green's come in. I think you'll see Mitch's form and Mitch's running game start to come back for the Knights.
And Michael Morgan, he's a quality player. He brings a lot to Cowboys, and no doubt will be there for Queensland as well.
Yeah, Timmy, he was tough on himself the week before. Pretty hard coming back from shoulder. That's what you got to tackle with. Coming back from shoulder injuries and all that sort of stuff. And mate, the thing I liked about him. He was, when he was interviewed in the weekend before the game, he was saying, "Look, I wasn't up to scratch, not up to my standard last week. You'll see a different me today." I really liked that. And when he played, they were unlucky not to beat South last week, and it was all on the back of Michael Morgan.
Yeah, he's a good quality player. Good footy. We're not far away from finals, and we're not far away from Origin. But Stephen, the thing that will be remembered so much from my perspective of this week's Behind Blue Eyes was your Gene Simmons type of moment where you were talking about blood spurting out of the tongue of Joel Thompson. It is an image I won't forget real soon.
I like the images in the paper and that. I actually would have liked just to watch how they stitched that up.
Remember Gene Simmons from Kiss? From Kiss.
I do.
Wanna rock and roll all night. All right.
That's him.
We've gone behind blue eyes. Let's do it all again next week.
Good luck, mate. Have a good week.